Everyone has something in their life that can be a stressor, but some people deal with their situations in more positive ways in order to take control. It's not difficult. You can do this too. Welcome to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully, with your host, Rusty Williams. In this program, you'll learn how using hypnosis and mindfulness can lessen the stress and strengthen your life. Now, here is Rusty Williams.
Well, good Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this, I don't know what episode we're at. God, is it 8, 9 now? My math isn't that good. But hey, welcome. And if it's your first time tuning in, if it's your first time listening, thank you. Thank you for finding us. And if you've been on board for a while now, well, thank you also for hanging with us. And, remember, you can find me on all the usual social media sites. Check out our website, njhypnosistraining.com. You'll find 5 MP3 downloads that are free right on the landing page that you can use, especially during this time of uncertainty. And there are, for various reasons, I'm not going to get into them now. You'll see them on the website, but they're free. So go to njhypnosistraining.com, download them, let me know what you think. You can also email me at 13.rwilliams@gmail.com. Well, let's jump right into this. If you remember last week we talked about the health and medical benefits of hypnosis and mindfulness, and especially during these uncertain times, how they can help us stay healthy. Well, today, we're going to take that, use that as a foundation, and talk about strategies that we can use to help us stay positive, to stay in the moment, ideas how to respond to others, how we respond to others, even to ourselves, when the communication is less than positive. I call it the inner critic. It's that little voice in the back of our head that's giving us all kind of garbage. And there's a lot of research on having a positive outlook in our health. And that's both our physical health and our mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And today we're fortunate to have a very special guest, someone who has had a significant impact on the study of positive psychology and on just being positive in general. This morning we're joined with David Pillay. David helps his executive coaching clients make more money, get promoted, enjoy better relationships, drive positive organizational performance, and find more fulfillment both at work and at home. He is the best-selling author of The Law of the Garbage Truck and The 3 Promises, and his books have been translated into 13 languages. An expert in the field of positive psychology, David's expertise has been utilized by businesses to improve organizational performances and increase personal and professional fulfillment. And this is a very personal end for me, and David was kind enough to be one of the first people to review my second book, and even more kind to write the foreword for it. David, good morning, and welcome to the show.
Rusty, it's great to be here, and I'm just so excited for you that you're doing this program, and Voice of America is lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you, and I'm honored to be not only the one who wrote your foreword, but to be on this show today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, sir. That does mean a lot to me. And you and I could talk about our personal stuff and get reacquainted all day long, but our listeners are going to think, what the heck am I tuning into? Come on, let's get into
exactly.
it. So here's, and this is, I love the synchronicity of the universe sometimes. Well, I always find it interesting. It was months ago, probably back in January, when I asked David if he would want to come on as a guest for this show. And this was before the coronavirus really was in the news a lot. This was before our world as we know it has changed. And the fact that we are now coming into such a critical part of what we're going through as a world, as a country, in our communities, in our own lives, all trying to stay positive. And here I have somebody who helped, if I remember, David, correctly, you helped co-found the International Association of Positive Psychology.
I did, yes.
So what were the chances? When I think about the synchronicity, here you are on this program today, so I am thrilled. And
me too.
With all the negativity going on and all the excess negativity with what we see when we turn on the TV, we turn on the radio, we talk to our friends, we go on social media, there is good, there's bad, and everything in between. But I think the negativity, the bad behavior really takes its toll on everyone. And maybe you can explain how the law of the garbage truck, just in a quick synopsis, how that came about and why everyone around the world has embraced the message of it. And what is the message of it?
Yeah, it's a great, a wonderful intro to the whole idea of how do we increase our happiness, and how do we manage our happiness on a day-to-day basis? How do we contribute to it? And what is it that we can do offensively, and not offensively like as in making people feel that we're offensive, but rather as an offense? What can we do that we can improve our own lives by taking certain actions? And then how do we respond defensively in the sense of when negativity comes from all different sources and can overwhelm our communications and our relationships? How is it that we, in our own happiness, how is it that we can navigate all of these negative inputs? And it really starts with three things that you and I have talked about before, and that is, the first is the whole idea of what do we take personally, and what, and I refer to it as garbage, which it relates to a metaphor we'll talk about, and the iconic story about the law of the garbage truck. But it really starts with what are we going to take personally that's negative that comes from all sources. So what do I mean by that? You go out on the street, you drive, someone cuts you off. Do you take that personally? A lot of people do. All of us at some point have. We go to the store, and this is for most of us, we're sheltering in place across the globe. But just before this started, or even now, if you go to the pharmacy and someone's a little rude, do you take that personally? And then do you take that story of that personal affront from maybe that person was a little short with you or cut you off in line, and then you take that home, and then it's like, how was your trip to the pharmacy? Well, I ran into this person, and then you tell this whole story, this negative story, and bring that home. And the question is, how often does that happen on a day-to-day basis, that you're running into people who are driving poorly or not as friendly as they could be, and or the boss is a little short with you on a certain day? And the big question right there is, what can you do? What is it that needs to be addressed, and what is it that's not worth the time and effort to focus on? And so what we're going to talk about today is how to differentiate between what's important, what's negative and important and needs your attention, and what's negative and nearly predictable that you can let pass by and not even take in the first place. So that's the first thing, and then I'll make the other two real quick. The second thing is, we don't even have to have other negative people in our lives who are excessively criticizing, complaining, and the like. We can make ourselves miserable by what we think about. So if we look out into the future and we find ourselves ruminating about all the worst things that can happen, we find ourselves in that mode of negativity ourselves, and we're full of that. And the same goes for the way we look at our past, and we start regretting things. And so now all of a sudden we're miserable by the things that we're regretting, or the people that we're resenting. And they're not even in the room, and we haven't even seen them in 20 years, and we find ourselves upset by the memory of them, which can happen just when you wake up. So you got garbage, what I call garbage coming in, things from other people that are excessively negative that you're taking personally. And then you're creating your own negativity every time you dwell on a thought that you've dealt with, let's say years ago, and handled, and you're still thinking about it. And then thirdly, you end up finding yourself in a position where you are dumping, and you'll start picking up on the metaphor that's coming if you're not familiar with the law of the garbage truck. Speaking to your great audience here, is that what are we taking from the negativity of others and our own negativity, and then turning around and dumping it on our family when we come out of our office or our room, or see someone in the morning or after work or in today's environment after we come out of the backyard after a breath of fresh air. What are we dumping on others? And so what's happening in this negativity is hitting us in these three important ways: stuff that other people do to us, stuff that we're doing to ourselves, and then stuff that we're doing to other people. And that creates a real vicious cycle. And people are not necessarily aware of those three cycles, but they are frustrated by it. They're tired of incivility. They're tired of people dumping their frustrations on them, carrying the burdens of others. And if we don't address it, happiness ultimately is not possible because you are under the control of other people. And so what we want to be able to do is find a constructive way. That's the law of the garbage truck I propose is one of those constructive ways of focusing on the important things in our lives and the things that we can make better, make the world a better place, and navigating the things that need attention and what we can leave aside and not fill our agenda with.
Well, so what you're using is a garbage, and everyone, it's amazing. Every Wednesday is garbage day here in our home in South Jersey. And as you're talking, there's the garbage truck. I'm looking out the side window, and there's the garbage truck going by. I think every one of us can get the mental image of a garbage truck in our mind. And so if I'm hearing you right, and for those who aren't familiar with the book, the metaphor is, the garbage, which stinks, it's rotten, it's stuff that we no longer need, we've gotten rid of, other people have gotten rid of, that gets dumped on us sometimes, and sometimes, so is it twofold? Sometimes we are the dumpee. How's that for a word? Sometimes we're the dumpee, and sometimes we're the dumper. Is that a fair synopsis? Yeah, I would definitely say big time. You've got the dumpee, the dumper, and then we also are the dumperator, and that we create our own garbage. Oh, there you go. Too. So you talked about these cycles. So, here we are in this, and it becomes this vicious cycle, doesn't it, in our mind? We become our thoughts, and then now we're in a really crappy mood because of something we thought about or we're worried about that's going to happen down the road, and we share our thoughts or our feelings, or we lash out at someone, they lash out back at us. It reinforces our crappy moods. We find something else to grab a hold of, and there's this cycle. How do we break that cycle? I mean, you have much more schooling than I do in the field of psychology, and with your experience as a coach. How do we break that cycle, and what cycle can we use instead? If we get rid of a cycle, and that's been our habit of mind for a while, how do we create a different cycle? Is it even possible? Yeah, that's a super question, and those cycles that you're referring to, I refer to as the garbage cycle of energy, because I posit that there are two cycles of energy in the world, and that are significant. There are others, but these are two, and that's the garbage cycle and the gratitude cycle. And I claim that you can only be in one of them at a time. And it can be moment to moment where we're making choices as to which one we're in. So the garbage cycle is waiting for us all the time. And it's inviting us all the time to come in and dive into it. And that is when people are complaining and they ask you to join them. And it's not productive complaining, it's excessive complaining. The excessive is the key word. A little complaining is normal. Humans do that. But excessive criticism, not good. That's part of the garbage cycle. Rumors, gossip, part of the garbage cycle. And if we stay in that spot, in that cycle, it's an attractor. We're bringing more people into that garbage cycle because that's the filter by which we're looking at our lives. So the key is, and I work with my executives that I coach, is to help them move into what we call the gratitude cycle, which is, from a positive psychology perspective, that the gratitude cycle is full of what we call positive emotion. Positive emotion, by the research, demonstrates that when we're creative, curious, open-minded, interested, enthusiastic, grateful, one of my favorites, we are
happier and more successful. We put ourselves in a much better position for relationships, as well as just improving our prospects at work. The gratitude cycle, on the other hand, those folks usually have career challenges, family challenges, the ones who consistently stay in the negative. And so there are the biggest way that I've found in a pretty quick time frame is to learn what I call the law of the garbage truck. And that's what Rusty, you and I know a lot about, talked a lot about over the years. And parenthetically, I value our friendship very much. And so the law of the garbage truck is ultimately a strategy that connects to a story that tells folks essentially how it is that you can let that garbage pass by so you can focus in on the important things that bring up your positive emotion.
You talked about choices, and I want to get. We have about 2.5, 3 minutes till the break, so I want to hold off till after the break where you can share the story of how the law of the garbage truck came out. I don't want to have to interrupt you on that.
Okay, sounds great.
But you mentioned more than once about we can make a choice. We can make a choice to switch from the garbage truck cycle to the gratitude cycle. And like you, I try to wake up with an attitude of gratitude every day. It's helped me a lot. How is there a way we can help? I don't want to say train our brains, but how can we help ourselves make that choice? If that's a fair question. In other words, some people say, well, this is just who I am. And do we need to want to make that choice first? Or is there a strategy you can offer in the next couple minutes on how we can choose gratitude, how we can choose to see something? You talked about the filter that we see things. What can we do to help make that choice?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, one of the first things that I talk to executives about this all the time is before you go into a meeting, before you go home, before you have a conference call, is to set your intention and take a moment to literally, and I say a moment, really take 30 seconds and think of 3 words. It can be 4, it can be 2, but 3 words that capture who you want to be in this moment. So if we're wanting to be more in the gratitude cycle and focusing on that versus the garbage, then our intention is what are those words that are going to trigger us to act in a way that's in concert with that. And when you set that intention, it's like a wake-up call. It's like, wait a second, do I want to be negative, pessimistic in this environment today with the coronavirus around us, or do I want to be practical, researched, friendly, warm, loving, whatever the words are that are going to help bring out your best? That's the first place to start, and to do that every day and throughout your day. And what I do is I have little. I write it on my planner, which I take with me to meetings, and I'll look at it in the corner before I'll start a meeting, and I also will set my intention differently at different points in the day, if it requires that I act in a certain way that I will be proud of and will find most productive.
So even with some people think, the wheels are falling off the cart right now, even with what's going on globally, we still have that choice. And it's as simple as making that intention, and I love that, setting that intention. It really, and I've said this before, sometimes we get trapped into thinking that the more complex a solution, the more steps in it, the better it is. But yet the simplicity of simply having that intention, writing 3 words down, is really all we need to remind us to say, this is who I want to be in this moment and in the moments ahead. Yeah,
that helps tremendously. And yeah, it does. It helps tremendously.
Well, I think that's, we'll end. How about if we end this segment on that positive note?
Perfect. Yeah, I love it.
And then on the other side of this break, I'd love for you to share, because I love hearing it every time, how you came about with the law of the garbage truck, and then how we can use that law in our lives, especially during this time of uncertainty. Does that sound fair?
That sounds perfect.
All right, David and I will be back right after this break.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or send us an email to info@voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click Register at the top right. Success starts here. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com. It's your world.
You're listening to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully. To reach the program today, you're welcome to call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send Rusty an email, his email address is 13.rwilliams@gmail.com. Now back to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We are here with David Polay today. And David, before we go any further, how can our listeners find you? Where can they, if they can follow you, how can they contact you? What's the best way that they can kind of figure out who you are?
Yeah, right, exactly. I appreciate that. Probably the easiest way is to go to paulaycoaching.com, and that's Paulay, P as in Peter, OLLAY, coaching.com. And then from there, people should be able to find their way to my newsletter, as well as some other sites that I have around the law of the garbage truck.
And I would imagine, are there any links there? Are there any instructions on how we can find your books, both The Law of the Garbage Truck and The Three Promises? Where can our listeners find them if they want to get one of your books?
You should be able to get them online all across the country, as well as internationally. Amazon carries it, as well as Barnes & Noble and other locations. You can go directly there. If you want to go through another site, my name, davidjpaulay.com, has a lot of information on the book, and as well as some videos that have been out there for now like 10 years. So
yeah, it has been 10 years, hasn't it?
It's incredible.
And so speaking of the book, how did it come about, The Law of the Garbage Truck? What's the story behind it?
Well, so the essence of it is that throughout my life, I've recognized that people learn through story. They don't remember that much about PowerPoint slides. They don't even remember that much about handouts and so forth. They remember a story. And then you can, on top of the story, hook in some important points. So when I was in college, I joined an organization called ISEC, AIESEC. It's focused on exchanging students interested in business around the world. And I happened to be taking a taxi to Grand Central Station, and I had this experience, and I'll tell that story. But I'll just say this quickly. What I've recognized over time is that this story was helpful to people. And so I told it more and more as a leader in business and speeches, and I shared it with more and more people. And then there came a point in time when I put it in my syndicated newspaper column at the time called The Happiness Answer. And I just remember coming back from a speech one night in my hotel room, and I go online, and I've never seen anything quite like it. Every time I refreshed my screen, there were more references to the law of the garbage truck, and more sites that were linking back to mine, and and for a couple hours I just watched just how it took off. And now we estimate maybe 500 million people have read, heard this story of the law of the garbage truck. So should we jump in? Should I
jump right in? I want to hear it again.
All right. So it's the basic setup is really just asking people, and this is what it says in the book, is really how often do we let other people their nonsense change our mood? It's a bad driver, a rude waiter, a curt boss, or an insensitive employee. Do they ruin your day? And I reference to one of my old fun movies, unless you're the Terminator, you're probably set back on your heels. So here's the story. As I mentioned, I was heading to Grand Central Station. I was waiting for a taxi, and in New York City, they're all over the place, a yellow cab. I jumped in, and we took off for Grand Central Station. Now, in New York City, there are no speed limits, so you can go as fast as you can. Which is not that fast with all the traffic, unless it's middle of the night. Anyway, middle of the day, we're going pretty quickly down the right-hand lane, when all of a sudden a black car jumps right out of their parking space right in front of us. So our car slams on the brakes, the tires squeal, and at the very last minute, our car stops just 1 inch from the other car's back end. I couldn't believe it, how close we got to this accident, and how this other driver almost sent us to the hospital. But here's what I couldn't believe what happened next. The guy in the other car, the guy who almost caused the major accident, he whips his head around and throws up his hand using we're number one.
There you go.
Yeah, right, exactly. You never know how young the listeners are, so throws his finger up in the air and starts screaming at us. And you can tell he's screaming those words because you can tell by that face, that angry face of yelling back at us. And then I'm like, I can't believe this guy is screaming at us. We're at fault. And then what happened next is what I really couldn't believe, and that was how my taxi driver responded. He just smiled and pulled around the car, waved at the guy, and just said, "Hey, have a good day." He wasn't taunting him. He was just smiling. He just said, "Have a good day. Take it easy," and he took off. Now I'm sitting in the back seat going, and thinking, how did he just do that? And so I sort of yell out, "How did you do that? Why'd you do that? This guy almost sent us to the hospital. He almost killed us." And this is when my taxi driver told me something that I eventually crafted into what I call the law of the garbage truck. And that is, many people are like garbage trucks. They run around full of garbage, full of frustration, full of anger, and full of disappointment. And as their garbage piles up, they look for a place to dump it. And if you let them, they'll dump it on, and in a big audience, everyone yells out, "You." And so when someone wants to dump on you, don't take it personally. Just smile, wave, wish them well, and move on. And that's what I heard as I was sitting in the back seat. And as I was sitting there thinking in a quiet moment, how often do I let garbage trucks run right over me? People with their frustration, their anger, things I have nothing to do with, nothing that I can control, nothing that I can change. And how often do I let their garbage fall all over me? And how often do I take their garbage and spread it to other people at work or at home or on the street? And it was then that I said, I don't want their garbage and I don't want to spread it anymore. So the movie The Sixth Sense, Russ, did you remember the movie The Sixth Sense?
Sure do.
Little boy, at that moment where Haley Joel Osment, he looks up and he says, "I see dead people."
Yep.
Well, now as a result of this and practicing the law of the garbage truck over time, I see garbage trucks. I see the load they're carrying. I see them coming to dump it. And like my taxi driver, I don't take it personally. I just smile, I wave, I wish them well, and I move on. If I'm able to help somebody and there's room to do it, that's definitely where I want to play. But if it's something that I can't control at all, there's nothing I can do about it, then I don't want to judge them and spend negative energy there. I want to let them pass by and move along. And so what happens is when we're able to perceive garbage trucks more often and offer what I call real-time forgiveness, especially on the road driving, and let them pass by without our judgment and just make our adjustments as we need to on the driving, and then continue focusing on the things that are most important, we're happier and we're more successful. And that's essentially the essence of the law of the garbage truck. Right there. Well,
and I love, and then when I read the book, and I'll tell in a minute my connection and to all this, and maybe I've never even shared this with you. I love the fact that it is wave and wish them well. You know, it's one thing to say, I'm not going to let them dump on me, and I'm just going to get out of the way. But you make a point. You make it's an overt act, whether you do it verbally or just in your mind, to wish that person well. And I guess that has to do with that real-time forgiveness that you just mentioned. And yes. I found that amazing, because this book could have been a book on just how to avoid getting garbage dumped on you, dumping on other people. But the fact that you added in there the idea of forgiveness by sincerely wishing the other person well, holding no ill will, I think for me, that was a real, I call it 2x4 therapy sometimes. Sometimes I need to be hit across the head with a 2x4, right?
We all do.
For me, that was that aha moment. That was that this book has me, because that part of wave and wish them well. And when I read this book, and this is where the connection to me comes in, and just let me steal the next minute or so of this, so you have an idea. I was ordained into the Christian ministry in 2008. I was a year later, and that year I married my best friend. That year was phenomenal. In 2009, my first book came out. After that first book came out, I was diagnosed with a tumor in my spinal cord at the end of beginning of December of 2009. We were, and of course, you want to talk about garbage, David. Let me tell you, my mind was filled, and I was I was angry. I had lost my job. I was unable to work as a police officer anymore. I wasn't able to do the things that a husband should be able to do with his wife. You can fill in the blanks. I wasn't able to be the father I wanted to be. There was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and I was grieving. I didn't know it at the time. And I was an ordained minister feeling all these feelings. Well, my wife, Elisa, took us on vacation. She said, we're getting out of here for a couple of days. We went down to the sunny shores of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right by your neck of the woods. Yes. And we spent a long weekend there. And I picked up the book, The Law of the Garbage Truck, which I believe came out in the beginning of 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And I read this book at the pool and on the beach, and it was such an easy read. I read it, and then I was like, Elisa, you have to read this. And for me, it was that moment where I learned about, and cops are cynical SOBs to begin with. That's the way we survive. But to get out of, and now that I was no longer a cop and I wasn't able to work, I could let go of looking for garbage. Your mindset is look for garbage before they dump on you, you dump on them. I was able to, by following the strategies in the book, your suggestions in the book, to let go of those things that weren't healthy, to wish those people you talked about before that had harmed me decades earlier, to let that go. But there was something, I'll never forget this, and why I remember it, I don't know. I turned to I got to page 45, and it was the beginning of a chapter. And in David's book, by the way, everyone, the chapters start with, and David has found quotes from influential people, and I'm guessing, David, it's to either set the tone for that chapter, to reinforce the message of the chapter, whatever. Absolutely. And there was a message from Michael J. Fox, a quote from Michael J. Fox that you started, and why I can still see the page 45 in the book, and it was, the only thing he couldn't control, this is right after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, the only thing he couldn't control was his diagnosis. Everything else he could control. And when I read that, I'm telling you, I was brought to tears sitting by that pool deck. Elisa looked over at me as if something was wrong, and I said, no, you don't understand. This is it now. I have control over everything else but this damn diagnosis of having a tumor in my spinal cord. So for you, my friend, I owe you probably my life, because that right there, it was just that wow. Again, 2x4 therapy. How's that? So I want to thank you for you putting down into words what I needed to hear. And I know your book has been translated into 13 different languages, right? And the law itself, the message, and I know there's cards that have been made up. That's gone to countries all over the world, hasn't it? I mean, schools have used this. I used your book, by the way, one time, giving a sermon. I used your book. How many people, do you have any idea, that are using the strategies, whether it's schools, whether it's ministries, whether it's businesses? Is there any idea of how many people? I know you said 500 million. Is that how many people have been impacted by this?
You know, it's interesting. I think it's up there. I think it may be more, because what I say now to all your listeners, if you haven't heard of the law of the garbage truck, wait for an email to come around from someone, or a post on Facebook. It's going to show up. It's like when you buy a new car and you don't see them on the road until you decide to buy one. Now that we've told you the law of the garbage truck is out there, it's really everywhere. And I think it is because of a really important point you made earlier, Rusty, about simplicity. That life is complex in many ways, and when we can have a simple guide that can help us with our behavior throughout the day, boy, it can make a difference. And the essence of the metaphor is that, as you said, garbage is in real life is meant to be picked up and then put away somewhere safely or recycled, but it's not meant. But humans are not meant to look around for all that's bad only, and then fill up on that and then dump it all over the place. We only should be focused on the things that are important, where we need to put our energy. And then your story, Rusty, is what helps get me up in the morning to do the work that I do, because I really appreciate you sharing that with me. I didn't know that, and that's awesome.
I was just waiting for the right moment. How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And you talked about the work that you do. We have a minute or so before break. What work do you do with executive coaches? Maybe we'll segue that into how all of us can benefit from what's in the law of the garbage truck and the different strategies there. What is it that you do with your executive part of your business?
Yeah, sure. Well, the executive coaching is really focused on helping the leader achieve their goals and to help them be as clear as they can be as to what they want to achieve in the role that they're in, and to help them envision a future that they want, and then to go about setting plans to achieve them. And one of the keys that I have absolutely found in every executive's success is their relationship, is the quality of their relationships, the energy that their relationships bring to other people, the energy that when people say they just saw Rusty, who is a great leader, by the way, they go, I feel uplifted, I feel better, I feel more knowledgeable, I feel appreciated. And if when a leader creates that type of energy in their relationships, they succeed. And so the key then is to catch ourselves when we're acting like a garbage truck, when we're either personalizing things that aren't important, or we're creating worst case scenarios that are unrealistic and not helpful. And when we find ourselves doing what they say in psychology, traditional psychology, displaced aggression, where we take something where people, displaced aggression is best described as when someone all of a sudden starts yelling at you, and you're like, wait, why are they yelling at me? And that's because this other person filled up on garbage somewhere else, and then unknowingly is dumping their frustration on somebody who's not deserving of it.
Gotcha. So you really help the leaders be the best leaders so they can get the best out of everyone on the team.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well said.
We'll talk about getting the best out of us. Maybe when we come back, David, if you have any other stories you can share about, pulling that leadership quality from others, and then how we can put the strategies of the law in our own lives in practice, especially with what's going on in the world around us. And we'll do that right on the other side of this break.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
Tune in to the Voice America Variety channel on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Voice America Variety broadcasts a diverse array of topics, reaching a global community. Our experts come from all walks of life, and the topics they discuss are everything from current events, arts and entertainment, leadership, parenting, relationships, self-improvement, career advice, and a variety of other topics. Check us out today. You're sure to find something of interest. Voice America Variety. Talk on today's hot topics.
We're on Facebook along with some of the greatest minds of the world, and that includes you. Visit us on Facebook at Voice America Empowerment.
You're listening to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully. To reach the program today, you're welcome to call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send Rusty an email, his email address is 13.rwilliams@gmail.com. Now back to Thinking Hypnotically, Living Mindfully.
Welcome back, everybody. We're joined with David Pillay. And David, before the break, you talked about what you do and how the leaders sometimes, for whatever reason, dump their garbage on other people. In your book, and this is another thing that stuck with me because I found it just eye-opening. There's a difference you put out there in the book between dumping your garbage on people and venting. And you say one is good and one is bad.
Yes.
Maybe you can pick up from there. Venting, I'm guessing, is good. It's okay to vent, but dumping is a negative. What is the difference between venting our frustrations, venting our feelings, and dumping those on other people?
Thank you for asking. I'm so glad, because this is one of the most important distinctions, and that is because people will say, "Come on, I want to be authentic. I want to be able to share what's on my mind," and I say you should. But there are two ways of doing it. And one is the dumping, and think of it this way. You're in your home, you're quietly reading something and then all of a sudden someone comes in, a loved one, in this case, since most of us are stay at home, or many of us are, they'll come in and just start ranting about something. And you're like totally on another plane at that moment, not understanding what's happening. And then they move into complaining and criticizing and so forth about whatever the story is. They're all fired up, and then you start trying to help them and maybe advising them or whatever the case. But then they are so frustrated, they leave, and they seem just as upset as they were before. We didn't necessarily feel like we helped them. And so all of a sudden we feel as though we've just been showered with garbage. And so rather than helping that person, we actually have now two people who are upset.
Yeah.
As you refer to it, the dumpy and the dumper. And so where I say is sharing is fine, and they say sharing is caring. Venting is different in this way. Venting is asked usually with a question like, hey, can I share with you something, or can I vent for a minute? And here are the 2 points. In that question, you're asking for permission, because somebody might say, I'm actually right now just about to go on a call with Rusty Williams. I want to be in the best place I need to be. Can I talk to you right after the show? And then they'll go, yeah, sure, no problem. So you ask for permission, and then when you say something to the effect of, can I vent for a moment, you're suggesting there's an end to the vent. It's not going to go on, and where dumping just feels like it's just an ongoing negative experience. Where venting for a moment, then someone feels as though, okay, sure, absolutely. In fact, most people respond positively to a request like that. And then you can move into sharing what you have to share. And I'll just say this about authenticity. Related to that, some people will think that authenticity is to honor the first thing that comes to mind. So someone does something that you don't like, and your first reaction is to lash out, and then you say, that's authentic, and that's how I should be able to respond. And I say, it's true that was one of your emotions, but just as true as I call it second level authenticity, is that there is another level of authenticity when we say, I'm going to take a step back for a moment and train our brains to do this, where I'm going to answer or I'm going to respond to the situation with perspective of what I'm really trying to accomplish in my life, the leader I want to be, and then I will say, from that perspective, how do I want to respond to this individual? How do I want to be with this person, as opposed to being an automaton that just stimulus and response. There's a great quote around the idea that the stimulus and response is the space between us, the space between the stimulus and the response, that's really our freedom. And I'll get Rusty the full quote, but that's the key, is to have that space and then take that and decide how we want to respond. And the last thing I'll just say is that sometimes people feel that in order for people to feel that they're understood, they have to make everyone around them feel their pain, and it's to make them upset, just as sad or upset as we are, versus taking it, describing to them and sharing what's going on, but leaving them in a good place to help us, versus the dumping, which ultimately sends people away from us because we bring so much negative energy.
And I think, wow, especially with what's going on right now, that, the people who are anxious, and maybe the anxious is more than anxious, maybe it's really in their minds, the fear. And instead of trying to get everyone else to feel how bad I feel, and I'm going to, you talked about the pain.
Yes.
Instead of trying to get everyone to agree with me that this is horrible, and because I feel horrible, therefore you need to feel horrible in order for us to connect on some kind of understanding. If I hear you right, David, what you're saying is, no, you don't have to do that. That, in fact, if you have the other person feeling just a little bit better about themselves, you've served two purposes. You were able to vent your concerns, your frustration, your fears, your doubts, your worries, but you also left someone else at the very least, first do no harm. At the very least, the person is no worse off than they were to begin with, but maybe you've even lifted them up a little bit.
Yeah, that is so true, because Brene Brown and others have talked about when we share and show some vulnerability as a leader, and I share this with my executives, it's thoughtful humility and thoughtful vulnerability, that when we share that we're really looking for someone's input, and we do it in a respectful way, people feel closer to us. That happens all the time. I'll ask my executives, I'll just say, look, what do you think about just going over and talking to that senior vice president and saying, look, people have given me this feedback. I don't quite get it. I love your perspective, and maybe a couple ideas that I could put in motion that will help me be more successful. So people really, you hit on such a great point, that people do really feel elevated when presented with the opportunity to give feedback through, say, venting versus the dumping, which no one likes.
And so the law of the garbage truck, difference between venting, difference between dumping, that's, and I'm looking at my little card that's in the back of the book.
Oh, yeah.
In the last few moments, we have about 4 minutes. Can you talk about the pledge? And for those of you that haven't read the book yet, how's that for future pacing?
I love that.
The suggestion. David ends with encouraging all of the readers, which now is all of us, to take a personal pledge and to really be sincere about that and be honest about it. Can you speak a little bit about that, David, to end this up on a positive note? Because this pledge is just filled with positivity and fulfillment. What is the pledge? And maybe you can just go through real quickly in the next 3 or 4 minutes. What are the steps of this pledge?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll just say one thing coming into that. The quote I was referencing a bit is by Viktor Frankl. So if anyone wants to see the quote about the freedom is the space between the stimulus and response, I love that quote. So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. The pledge came, and your story, Rusty, is my story in this regard. I wrote the Law of the Garbage Truck. I've been teaching it for years. There's you and I on the break. We're talking about we could speak for a lot longer, and enjoy it, and love to have your audience along for it.
We got 3 minutes, so let's do this.
Let's do this. So the idea was, if you really want to get something in your body, in your mind, in your soul, you've got to really make a pledge and an emotional one. And so, what I've done is taken people from more than 100 countries through what I call the No Garbage Trucks Pledge, and that is to help people lock in their system that this is what I really stand for. So if we want to have a little fun with this, we can do it, the two of us. I can say it, you can repeat it, and
there you go. Let's do it.
All right. So and readers out there, not readers of course, but listeners, same thing. Do it with us, and it's as simple. And use your hands and your body, and I'd say stand up if you can, and here it is. I do not accept garbage in my life.
I do not accept garbage in my life.
When I see garbage trucks.
When I see garbage trucks.
There you go. I do not take them personally.
I do not take them personally.
I just smile.
I just smile.
I wave.
I wave.
I wish them well.
I wish them well.
And I move on.
And I move on.
And I do not spread garbage to others.
And I do not spread garbage to others.
And then we do this very loudly in live, and that is, I am not a garbage truck.
I am not. This reminds me of I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I am not a garbage truck.
That's right. We have a movie in the making here.
There you go.
I do not accept garbage in my life is the final line.
And I do not accept garbage in my life. And I've watched David live. I've watched his talks, his keynotes when he does this, and people really get into this. I mean, when the camera pans to the audience of hundreds, thousands of people, and they're standing up doing this, and especially when I've seen it with school children, it is such a moving thing to witness, and I can only imagine being there live in person to experience this.
Yeah, it's pretty special, and Yes, go ahead.
Well, no, I just think especially during this time in our history.
Yes.
And we're all going to get through this, and we're going to look back at this time and the stories that we share about resilience, about strength that we share with our children or grandchildren, I think are going to be phenomenal. And I just think having this pledge, having something that we can hold on to that gives us hope. And I know we could probably talk another hour about the benefits of hope. I just think it's a wonderful place to be. So, David,
I appreciate that.
I can't thank you enough for giving up. I know you're busy. You have a busy schedule. I want to thank you for giving up an hour of your time to share your wisdom, your expertise, your stories with everyone here. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Well, as I like to say to my kids, Rusty, for you, the world, and it's my pleasure, and I'm so thrilled that you're doing this show on Voice of America, and this is a lot of people are benefiting by it, and I'm one of them. So, thank you for the chance to be with you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, David. And that will wrap it up for this episode. We'll catch you next week, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Wash your hands. Bye-bye.